3 days after my husband Ethan's funeral, I found myself sitting alone on a cold park bench, clutching a half-wrapped sandwich I didn't even want to eat. The world around me kept moving, children laughed in the distance, cars hummed along the street, but for me, time had stopped. The moment Ethan's coffin disappeared beneath the earth, that's when I noticed him. A frail, homeless man with sunken eyes and trembling hands shuffled toward me. Out of instinct more than kindness, I tore the sandwich in half and offered it to him. He accepted silently, chewing slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. Then, without warning, he slipped a crumpled scrap of paper into my palm. Scrawled across it was a phone number. He leaned close, his whisper cutting sharper than the winter wind. "It's time for revenge. Your father-in-law will pay." My blood froze. How could he possibly know? Grief has a strange way of making ordinary tasks unbearable. After Ethan's funeral, I couldn't step into our bedroom without feeling crushed by the emptiness. His shirts still hung in the closet, his cologne lingered on the pillow, and the silence screamed louder than any storm. I wanted to hide, to curl up and disappear, but life didn't pause for me. The morning after the burial, Richard, my father-in-law, came to the house. He didn't knock, he never did. He strode in as though he owned the walls, his heavy shoes thudding against the wooden floor. "Riley," he said sharply, his voice cold as steel, "I'll be handling Ethan's accounts from now on. Don't touch a single paper or bank statement. Do you understand?" I blinked at him, my throat tightening. "Richard, Ethan was my husband. I deserve to know what's happening with his estate." He cut me off with a raised hand. "You were his wife, yes, but you were never truly part of this family. Ethan made mistakes. I won't let you make another." My chest burned with anger, but his presence always made me feel small. For years, I had tried to win even a shred of his approval, and for years, he reminded me I was an outsider. Now, with Ethan gone, he saw me as nothing but a nuisance to erase. As he turned to leave, I whispered under my breath, "You act like you lost nothing." Richard stopped at the door, his back rigid. Without looking at me, he said, "I lost my son, but I won't lose the company he almost ruined." The door slammed shut, rattling the frame. I collapsed into a chair, tears stinging my eyes. That was the moment I realized. Ethan's death wasn't just tragedy, it was the opening act of something darker, and Richard was at the center of it. In the weeks that followed, Richard's presence pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. He called constantly, not to ask how I was coping, but to remind me of boundaries. One evening, he showed up unannounced again. He leaned against the doorframe, his expensive coat glistening with raindrops, his expression carved from stone. "Riley," he said, his tone low but commanding, "you'll stay in this house until further notice. I don't want you digging into Ethan's affairs, and I certainly don't want you speaking to anyone from the company. Are we clear?" I tightened my grip on the doorknob, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Why are you so desperate to keep me silent? Ethan was my husband. I deserve to know what he was working on." Richard's lip curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Ethan had a dangerous curiosity. It cost him. Don't let it cost you too." The words chilled me. Dangerous curiosity? Cost him? Was he suggesting Ethan's death wasn't an accident? I tried to meet his eyes, but Richard's gaze was impenetrable, like staring into a void. After he left, I wandered through Ethan's study. Dust still clung to the bookshelves, but on the desk, his laptop sat closed, password locked. I ran my fingers across the keys, remembering the late nights he'd spent hunched over it, whispering that he was close to figuring something out. What had he meant? On the floor beside the desk, I found a leather-bound notebook shoved halfway under the rug. My heart raced as I flipped it open. Ethan's handwriting filled the page's cryptic notes about transactions, offshore accounts, and a name repeated over and over, Richard Sterling. I sank into the chair, trembling. My husband had been investigating his own father, and now Ethan was gone. The puzzle pieces were starting to take shape, and I felt a fire ignite deep inside me. If Richard thought I would stay silent, he was wrong. For nights, the notebook burned in my mind. I barely slept, replaying Ethan's notes, his restless whispers, the way his eyes had carried both fear and determination before he died. Richard's warning echoed in my ears. Ethan had a dangerous curiosity. It cost him. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows, I pulled out the crumpled scrap of paper the homeless man had pressed into my hand. The phone number stared back at me like a dare. My fingers trembled as I dialed. The line clicked after a few rings. A deep, rasping voice spoke. "I was wondering when you'd call." I swallowed hard. "Who are you? And what do you know about my father-in-law?" A low chuckle. "Your name is Riley, yes? I knew Ethan. He came to me before he died. He trusted me. And he told me if anything happened, you'd need help." My chest tightened. "You're lying." "No," the voice said firmly. "Richard Sterling isn't just powerful, he's ruthless. He silences anyone who gets too close to the truth. Ethan discovered something he shouldn't have. That's why he's gone." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. "If you know so much, then why are you hiding in the shadows? Why come to me now?" "Because," the man said, his tone softening, "you're the only one left who can finish what Ethan started. Meet me tomorrow at Gray's Diner on 5th, 10 a.m. Don't be late." The line went dead. I sat in the dark, heart hammering, the dial tone ringing in my ears. Whoever this man was, he knew too much. And for the first time since Ethan's death, I felt something stronger than grief, anger. I whispered to the empty room, "Richard, if you had anything to do with this, I'll find out. And you'll pay." Gray's Diner was nearly empty that morning. The smell of burnt coffee clung to the air, and the hum of a flickering neon sign buzzed outside the window. I slipped into a booth, clutching my coat tighter around me. My nerves sparked with every creak of the door. Then I saw him, the homeless man from the park. But here, cleaned up slightly. He looked different. His beard was trimmed, his eyes sharp and unflinching. He slid into the booth across from me, setting down a battered briefcase. "You came," he said, his voice low. "I need answers." I shot back. "You knew Ethan. You knew something about Richard. Tell me why you whispered those words. Time for revenge." He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "My name is Samuel Brooks. I once worked for Richard Sterling. I was his accountant, until I uncovered what he was hiding. Offshore accounts, money laundered through shell companies, bribes to silence officials. When I confronted him, he ruined me, took everything, left me on the streets." I felt my stomach knot. "And Ethan? What does this have to do with my husband?" Samuel's expression softened for the first time. "Ethan found me months ago. He was already suspicious of his father, digging where he shouldn't. He asked for my help to gather proof. But before we could finish, he died." Tears stung my eyes. "You're saying Richard had him killed?" Samuel didn't flinch. "I can't prove it. Not yet. But Ethan was close, too close. And Richard has a history of making problems disappear." I leaned back, struggling to breathe. The notebook in Ethan's handwriting, the late nights, his cryptic words, it all pointed to this. Samuel pushed the briefcase toward me. "Inside, you'll find what Ethan and I collected. It's not complete, but it's enough to open doors. Enough to put Richard on edge." My hands shook as I pulled the case closer. "Why give this to me?" His eyes locked onto mine. "Because Ethan trusted you. And because Richard Sterling thinks you're broken, powerless. That's your advantage. He'll never see you coming." A surge of determination replaced the fog of grief. For the first time since Ethan's death, I felt alive with purpose. I closed the briefcase with a snap and whispered, more to myself than to Samuel, "Then let's make him pay." The briefcase Samuel gave me weighed more than steel. Every time I opened it, Ethan's notes and Samuel's documents screamed the same truth. Richard Sterling wasn't just powerful, he was corrupt to the bone. But evidence alone meant nothing unless I could tie it directly to him. That meant going where I swore I'd never set foot again, Richard's office. Late one evening, I drove to Sterling Enterprises headquarters, my pulse thundering in my ears. Security was tight, but I remembered Ethan once showed me a side entrance that employees used after hours. My hands trembled as I swiped the ID card Samuel had somehow kept from his old job. Miraculously, the door clicked open. The hallways were eerily silent, polished marble floors reflecting the faint glow of emergency lights. I found Richard's office, its heavy mahogany door looming like a warning. My chest tightened as I slipped inside. The room smelled faintly of cigars and expensive leather. On his desk sat a locked drawer. I searched frantically, and at last found a set of files inside the cabinet: contracts, wire transfers, notes, written in Richard's precise, ruthless handwriting. Each page screamed conspiracy. Looking for something. The voice froze me. Richard stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the light of the hall. His eyes, dark and gleaming, locked on me like a predator. "Richard," I stammered, clutching the files to my chest. He stepped forward, shutting the door behind him with a deliberate click. "Curiosity," he said slowly, "is what killed Ethan. And now, it seems, it runs in the family." My throat went dry. What did you do to him?" His jaw tightened. "Ethan was weak. He couldn't handle the weight of this family. But you, Riley, you're stubborn, dangerous. And if you keep this up, you'll end up buried beside him." The words sliced through me, but instead of fear, fury surged. I squared my shoulders. "If you had nothing to hide, you wouldn't be standing here threatening me. Maybe you killed your son, Richard, but you won't silence me." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then Richard's lips curled into a cold smile. "You've just declared war." He stepped aside, opening the door with mocking courtesy. "Go home, Riley. Take care of yourself while you still can." I walked past him, every nerve on fire, the files still clutched in my hand. His voice followed me down the hall, low and venomous. "You have no idea who you're fighting." But I whispered to myself, gripping the papers tighter. "Neither do you." Back home, I spread Richard's stolen files across my dining table. My hands shook as I flipped through each page. The deeper I went, the sicker I felt. Offshore accounts, payments to officials, shell corporations masking funds that disappeared overnight. But one document stopped me cold. A transfer of $500,000 to a consulting firm dated 2 days before Ethan's car crash. Next to it, scribbled in Richard's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Take care of it." My stomach lurched. The crash that killed Ethan had been no accident. I clutched the page to my chest, tears burning my eyes. "You knew, Ethan," I whispered. "You were trying to warn me." The phone rang suddenly, making me jolt. It was Richard. "Riley," his voice dripped with menace. "Stay out of things you don't understand. Grief makes people reckless." I clenched my jaw. "No, Richard. Grief makes people dangerous, and I'm not afraid of you." There was silence on the line, then a low chuckle. "You should be." He hung up, leaving me trembling. Later that night, I met Samuel again in a deserted parking lot. I thrust the document at him. "This proves it, doesn't it? Ethan's death, it wasn't random." Samuel studied the page, his face grim. "It's a smoking gun, Riley, but Richard still has friends in high places. If we move too soon, he'll bury us before we can touch him." I gripped his arm. "Then we need to move fast. I won't let Ethan's sacrifice mean nothing." Samuel sighed. "If we go down this road, there's no turning back. Richard will come after you with everything he has." I looked him square in the eyes, my voice steady. "Then let him. I've already lost the love of my life. I've got nothing left to lose." In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer just Ethan's grieving widow. I was a woman with fire in her veins, armed with the truth and a promise of revenge. The following week blurred into chaos. Samuel and I worked day and night, piecing together Ethan's notes, Richard's files, and Samuel's old ledgers. Each page was a blade, each discovery another nail in Richard Sterling's coffin. "This isn't enough," Samuel muttered one night, exhaustion in his eyes. "He'll deny it all. We need exposure, real exposure." That's when I contacted Anna Carter, an investigative journalist Ethan once trusted. We met in a shabby motel room, curtains drawn tight. I slid the files across the table. Anna flipped through them, her face hardening. "If what's in here is real, Sterling's empire won't survive the week." Her words ignited something in me. Fear, yes, but also vindication. 2 days later, headlines exploded. "Sterling Empire under fire. Evidence of corruption surfaces." News vans swarmed outside Richard's headquarters. Shareholders demanded answers. For the first time, Richard Sterling was on the defensive. But the victory was short-lived. That evening, as I walked back to my car, headlights flared in the alley. Tires screeched. I barely dove aside as a black SUV roared past, missing me by inches. My hands shook as I pulled myself up, adrenaline coursing. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Richard's voice slithered through the speaker. "You think you're clever? You think a widow and a washed-up accountant can touch me? You've made a mistake, Riley. A mistake you won't live to regret." My blood froze, but I forced my voice steady. "You can try to scare me, Richard, but the world's already watching. This time you won't bury the truth." There was a sharp intake of breath, then the line went dead. That night, Samuel and I hid at a safe house Anna arranged. We spoke in hushed whispers, fear heavy in the air. "He'll come harder now," Samuel warned. "He won't stop until one of us is gone." I held Ethan's photo in my hands, my chest burning with grief and fury. "Then let it be him." For the first time since Ethan's death, I felt no trace of despair, only fire. This was no longer just survival. This was war. The day of the shareholder meeting arrived like the eye of a storm. Sterling Enterprises' grand conference hall buzzed with tension. Journalists clustered outside the glass doors, their cameras flashing like lightning. Samuel squeezed my hand before we slipped into the back row. On stage, Richard stood tall in his tailored suit, his voice booming with practiced authority. "These allegations are baseless lies. Fabrications meant to smear my family's name." But Anna was already in motion. She passed sealed folders to the board members, documents Samuel and I had risked everything to collect. Bank statements, offshore transfers. The page marked, "Take care of it." The room erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. One shareholder slammed his fist on the table. "Explain this, Richard. Did you kill your own son to protect your empire?" Richard's face darkened, sweat glistening on his brow. For the first time, the mask cracked. He barked, "This is slander. I built this company with my own hands." I stood, my voice cutting through the chaos. "No. Ethan built it on truth. You built it on lies. And you destroyed him for daring to expose you." All eyes turned to me. Richard's gaze locked on mine, venomous. "You ungrateful—" "Save it," I spat. "The world sees you now for what you are. A murderer. A coward. A man who silences his own blood." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, like a tidal wave, reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. The board voted within minutes. Richard was stripped of power, escorted out by security as the crowd jeered. I followed him with my eyes, as he stumbled, his empire crumbling around him. For the first time, Richard Sterling looked small. Outside, the sky opened, rain pouring down in sheets. I tilted my face to the storm, tears mingling with raindrops. Samuel placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. I shook my head. "No, Samuel. It's just the beginning. Ethan's gone, but his voice lives on in this victory. And I'll make sure Tony grows up knowing his father's truth, not his grandfather's lies." That night, as I tucked Ethan's photo into a frame beside my bed, I whispered, "We did it, love." Justice came late, but it came. For the first time since his death, I slept without fear.